Hey, I just got back from my trip to the US and I thought I'd bring you to one of my favorite spots in my home city of Brasilia. Now back to the video. A couple of weeks ago I visited the US and did a few thrifting expeditions myself. In rounding up my findings, I have good and bad news. The bad news is that I think thrifting for video games is dead. Mostly dead, and I'll show you why throughout this video. It's not all bad news though. Stick to the end for the conclusion and the good news. My visit was to Washington, D.C. and the surroundings, and there are quite a few thrift stores in the area. The first Goodwill I visited looks pretty good. Nice building, and as I went in, I went straight to the shelves with the electronic things. There were a few nice receivers and some DVD players. Wireless keyboards missing the dongle, and something tells me this is going to be a trend at Goodwill stores. I remember these surge protectors with individual switches. They are pretty cool. Some people used to have them under their CRT monitors in the 90s. They also had some PSUs, not very useful to me at this point. Some more random stuff, a collection of early beefy LCD TVs. So far I hadn't found any games, but making my way out I realized there's a section where all games are stored and displayed. I can see they have a bunch of Xbox 360 games, a few Xbox One games, and what do you know? Some small box PC games. There's a copy of Peter Jackson's King Kong and Fear. One thing you have to be careful about when buying used PC games is that they need to be old enough to not require online activation. I think you're in the safe zone if they use the CD media, but not the DVD media. The second Goodwill I went to was in a strip mall. To be fair, I think most of them are. This one was apparently a bit smaller than the others. It had tons of media, DVDs, books, TV shows. Ooh, Heroes. Who remembers this? More TV shows and movies on DVD, vinyl records, CDs, nothing that caught my eye though. On the way to the electronic section, there are a few cheesy works of art, and here's a nice little 4x3 LCD monitor, probably somewhat low res. A bunch of speakers, it seems to be another trend with thrift stores. I wonder if they all are in good working order. TVs and receivers, wireless router and wireless keyboards missing the dongle. The prophecy is being fulfilled. A multifunctional printer and kitchen appliances, and I think this is sort of a drone on wheels from Brookstone. Reminds me of the little car in the game Watch Dogs 2. Useful thing if you want to invade and remote hack someone else's fridge or something. So yeah, no games at all in this Goodwill. A bit of a shame. Goodwill number 3 is yellow and massive. The bigger the better. One thing I'm kind of keeping an eye out for is a good pair of beige retro PC speakers. So far I haven't seen a good pair on any of the stores I went to. Got close on this one, found this black Harman subwoofer, not beige and missing the speakers. Oh well. These old Apple device docks with speakers and the old connector have flooded all Goodwills. Well, that was expected. And what do you know? A wireless keyboard with no dongle. Surprise, surprise. Here's a tiny DVD player and a decent keyboard. Not wireless, but I don't need a keyboard. Ooh, stereo CD players. I do kind of like the way they look. Very modern, for the 80s of course. Here's some more speakers and a stereo system, and that's it for the equipment part. At first, I thought this store only had a couple of games in the front counter, but looking more carefully toward the exit, I found a big media section, and what do you know? Some computer games. Here's a copy of ReGen, the continuation of the famous Myst. Seems like it's kind of loose, missing the big box, but for $2.99, I'll take it. Here's a whole batch of Civilization, and although pretty cool, these probably require online activation. BioShock, same deal, and here's a PlayStation Call of Duty Finest Hour. Ooh, a copy of Doom 3. I like it, but also missing the box, and my totally legit copy of Doom 3 is working perfectly, so I'm good. Finally, a store with some games. That's what I like to see. Goodwill number 3 is gigantic. It only has a small section of games, which by now I should be thankful it has one at all. They had a few The Sims titles and a Battlefield Bad Company game that certainly needs to be activated online. The electronics part was pretty big. Interesting scale here. Some of those obsolete Apple docks, useless wireless keyboards, and Sony, not computer speakers. Clock radio, looks neat and vintage. Portable DVD player, there seems to be many of those around. More non-computer speakers. Lots and lots of keyboards and semi-modern boomboxes. An assortment of printers and some Boston computer speakers. Neat, not exactly something I'd want, but neat nevertheless. And here we have an Xbox 360 with no accessories at all for $39.99. No thanks. Ooh, Harman bass speakers. Now these are some nice retro PC speakers I'd like to have. Right beside them there's this cool 4x3 LCD TV, and look at that, a vintage Sony boombox. Very nice. Blu-ray player, not really interesting. And here's a laptop. What? Oh, it's one of those things for kids I suppose. And I don't think there's a real computer in there. A little Kodak Easy Share camera with no accessories, more computer speakers. Cool, but black. Not really what I'm looking for. More speakers, these are modern and not so good. Now what's this wheel for? Looks like a standalone kid's toy. There's more stuff on the other side, like this wood grain modern thing. I don't really like these, they seem cheap. Another portable DVD player and a Panasonic VHS-C camcorder. And here's some kind of portable video game. Looks like crap though. Wow, does this guitar have an inbuilt speaker? Wow. And this seems like a good speaker set with a subwoofer, but a bit too big for my travel needs. A lonely Xbox 360 controller, I guess you know where your father is. A set of cheap home theater speakers, and look at these, very nice Infinity speaker set. Unfortunately they're not powered, so not amplified. I like the way they look, but they probably don't get to a decent volume level considering they're not amplified. Hey, remember these gaming chairs? They were cool if you had your gaming CRT set close to the floor. If I recall, they were called boom chairs. And that's going to be it for this Goodwill. Unfortunately, the speakers I liked didn't have a price tag, and I learned they don't sell them if they don't have the tag. I'm not sure what the procedure is, and an attendant wasn't willing to help me, so I couldn't buy them this time. Besides Goodwill, I did find another interesting thrift store. This one is called the Habitat for Humanity Restore. It's by far the store with the most amount of junk, and as for video game titles, I found very little, and after looking a lot. The place is not very well organized. Their main thing seems to be big appliances and furniture, and they have a good selection of electronics. Again, not the best organization style I've seen, but I did find some cool all-tech Lansing beige retro PC speakers that I ended up grabbing for $5. Unfortunately, I couldn't find their power supply unit. Should be something easy enough to find, and to be frank, I'll be happy and surprised if they are in perfect working condition. We finished the Goodwill round, and out of them all, ironically, only the first one had somewhat of a collection of games for sale. In regards to retro video games, the visit to most of them was a bit of a waste of time. I have two theories for why this is. Either people are selling their retro gear directly to retro video game stores, or the retro stores have people doing regular rounds to Goodwills and picking all the good stuff up first. This is why I believe that thrifting for video games these days is basically a futile exercise and an activity of the past. But wait, we're only halfway through the video. What else can be said about this topic? Well, since retro video game stores are popping up everywhere in the US, let's go see what we can find in them. And I got some company to do that with. While I was in DC, I had a very cool visit of a fellow Retrotech tuber and friend, Rik from Riks Random Retro. And we did a couple of Retrotech related things. First of all, Retrotech Chris, another YouTuber, was kind enough to invite us to visit the System Source Computer Museum in Hunts Valley, Maryland. There, we did the guided tour with the museum founder, Bob Roswell, and it was fantastic. I recommend to anyone in the area to visit this museum. Besides the Retrotech collection, they have dates set up for repair workshops if you need to repair any of your Retrotech. Thanks Chris, this was amazing. Now off to the retro video game stores. In every store, I mainly looked for PC games. The first one we walked in is called a ReGen, and it's located in the Townsend Town Center in Maryland. The store has tons of stuff ranging from Atari to modern days. They pretty much have everything. It was cool to see they have a big collection of portable games. Besides PC, those are my favorite to collect for, and they had Game Boy, Game Gear, GBC, GBA, 3DS, and Vita, and I enjoy collecting for the DS, 3DS, and Vita, but nothing specifically caught my eye.
I have the funny because Final Fantasy Adventure, I have that, but it's called Mystic Quest in Europe, so.
Dude, Metal Gear, $150, what the hell?
Yeah, you get the ones that are rare, and look, there's Pokemon 250.
I ended up getting a couple of games for the Game Gear, a system I acquired recently and need to repair. Unfortunately, ReGen didn't have any PC games, but let's not lose faith and go to the next one. Next, we drove to Ellicot City, also in Maryland. Ellicot City is an unincorporated community with historic buildings that are nice to look at and to photograph. We heard there were a couple of cool retro stores down here. I spotted a huge store called Antique Depot, and in one of their corners they have a video game section. There, Rick found a couple of titles.
Okay. Motocross Maniac in the middle, and then Dr. Mario. That's what it is. Unless you're grabbing some too, Bruno.
No, not for now.
Think about it.
Yep. I didn't find any that was of interest, but I did find some loose PC games in the store. I wasn't really interested in taking any of them home though. Still in Ellicott City, there's a store called Time Warp. Also a very neat store, tons of games for the 360, SNES, and portables. This is a great store, but I have to say that prices were a little bit steep for me.
I bought Killer Instinct for Game Boy a while back. It's surprisingly good.
Really?
Yeah.
Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance for $79, Symphony of the Night, an all-time classic, going for $139. Cool store, but again, no PC stuff at all, and a bit expensive, but worth the visit. So Superbit was the next store we went to, and it was my favorite of the lot. It's got an inconspicuous facade, but it's got an amazing collection of games, consoles, accessories, and just a lot to browse through. I enjoyed looking through the bins of cheap portable games with Game Gear, GBA, DS, and PSP games. In truth, I kind of regret not getting more GBA games, a system I enjoy very much. In the glass cabinets, as usual, you find the best stuff. Nothing that caught my eye with the combination of good game at a good price. They have so much stuff, they even have some PC game magazines, and also, finally we have some big box PC games. The last store of this kind we ventured in was one called eStarland, also a place you are unlikely to stumble into. When I walked in, I was baffled by the amount of stuff they have in there. Basically a warehouse of old video games. Also, pretty surprising to know that with all of this, they have zero PC games. In any case, although the store is huge and has tons to offer, a major problem with it is that things are not priced. You have to look everything up in their website through an online bar scanner, and that just makes it so much harder to find interesting deals. Rick and I both looked at a couple of prices and gave up on their system.
I'm just gonna scan. Yeah, there you go.
How much is it?
Invalid operation.
Huh. As cool as seeing all that stuff is, in truth, it isn't a very pleasant shopping experience. eStarland was the last store we visited together. After this, we had some lunch and Rick went back to his hometown. I continued exploring on my own, and this is where I came across the best deal I got. This lonely door leads into a store in Baltimore called Protein Books and Records. As the name suggests, video games aren't their main business, but they do have quite a bit. And the good thing about this one and other non-specialized stores is that they usually don't overcharge. Here I found quite a selection of big box PC games, of which I ended up grabbing a bunch, and I got a pretty good deal. This store is awesome. If you enjoy vintage things overall, they have a large collection of records as well. There's a bargain back room with CDs, DVDs, 8-tracks, and whatever else you can find in there. They also have this Tales of the Crypt kind of scary room thing with the caged killer ape. Ha! What a trip, man. So in conclusion, I would say that going to Goodwill stores nowadays is not the best way to thrift for video games. Of course, you can try and see what you get, but most likely you won't find anything interesting. That's why I think that in this way, thrifting for video games is dead. But of course, you can try to go to garage sales and specialized stores like I just did, and that would be a better way to go about this in my opinion, especially if you have limited time. And with that, we're going to wrap up this thing. I do hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks very much for sticking with me till the end. Tell me in the comment section how you like to shop for retro media. Personally, this is how I like to do it. And don't forget to do all those good things. Subscribe, click the like button, bell icon, and I hope very much to see you on the next one.